Hello, and welcome to the Wine Educate podcast. This is episode 80, and I'm your host, Joanne Close. Oh, we made it to 80. So if you are an OG listener to the Wine Educate podcast, you will know that every 10 episodes, I do ask that you please share this with someone. Many of you are in class right now, so you just turn to the person next to you and say, I like this podcast. I find it useful, only if you do, obviously. And then spread the word. Or if you have that favorite wine nerd in your life, text them a link or whatnot. I would really appreciate that. It is the best way for me to get this in the ears of people that would actually like a nerdy wine podcast. Okay, we are continuing our series of wines of the south of France. We have done the Languedoc and Roussillon, and of course, we cannot forget Provence. So we're doing Provence today. When we think of Provence, we just really want to go on vacation, right? Let's go. Let's go to Provence. Let's lay on the beach and let's drink. Oh, what's that? Rosé? Yes, you are correct. Rosé. And Provence and rosé is not just some cliche. It dominates its wine production. About 90% of the wines made in Provence are indeed rosé. This is not a flash in the pan phenomenon. Provence has a long history, over 2,000 years, of making the pink stuff. It is part of its tradition. So let's go back in time a bit. Let's talk about the history, only briefly. When did vines first get planted here? Well, the Phoenicians came and founded Massalia, which is present-day Marseille, in about 600 BC and began viticulture. There is a lot that's happened between then and phylloxera, but in a nutshell, I will say that many people had their hands in this region. And what has resulted from this is that Provence actually has a wide variety of grapes that are grown here. So folks would come into the region, bring their own grapes, and leave them there, and consequently left this really diverse patchwork of grapes here in Provence. Of course, phylloxera happened and had a devastating effect on the vines. They got to replanting, and when the railroad came into the region, that's when they were able to really get back on their feet, because the railroad, just like we learned about with the Languedoc, enabled them to get their wines out to other regions of France and helped with their sales. And rosé is the main event. They have the Centre de Rosé here. They hold the claim to fame of having the only center built and dedicated to the study of rosé. And they're doing some very good research in this center. A lot of it surrounding climate change. Provence is popular. It is the second biggest tourist destination outside of Paris. Often when I tell people that my family has a vineyard in the south of France, they immediately think Provence. And then I tell them Languedoc and they give me a little look like, what are you talking about? And then we describe what the Languedoc is. But Provence is the one that's really the most well-known. There's been some outsider investments, some really well-known people buying vineyards here recently. We know Brad Pitt has a vineyard here. George Lucas does as well. Louis Vuitton, Chanel. So there's been this luxury influx of investment in Provence, which has only helped increase the image of this area. And also with this capital comes better research and better wines. All right, so let's get a bit of the lay of the land. Provence is roughly 150 to 200 miles from east to west, depending on which point you are measuring, stretching all the way from the Rhone River and Languedoc to the west, all the way to Italy on the east. So indeed, Jim and I drove through this region this summer on our way from Chateau Campbellsens in the Languedoc, through the southern France, into Italy, on our way to Piedmont. So we drove past all these famous places. Cannes, Nice, Saint-Tropez, Arles, Marseille, all these really well-known towns. I've never been to the Cannes Film Festival. One day I'll make it there. I'm sure it's fabulous. But really popular, kind of ritzy, I will say. We drove by and you could see these hotels that are built, and some of them look quite spectacular. I swear one of them had like a pool on every level. Anyway, the climate here is firmly Mediterranean, getting about 3,000 hours of sun per year and not a lot of rainfall. So about 700 millimeters or 27 inches of rain. 27 inches in a week in New Orleans. In the summertime, we may get that much rain. It's absolutely wild if you really think about it. The winters are mild enough because these vines need dormancy, and so the winters do get mild enough for the vines to achieve that. The biggest weather issue is the Mistral. We've been talking a lot about winds with all these regions, and the Mistral is that wind that comes down from the Rhone. It can get very fierce, very strong. They have to be careful where they plant the vines to protect from this wind, and the best spot is on the southern slopes, so it's back to the winds and it's not affected so much. But the Mistral is also really useful, right, in that it dries out the vines, helps with disease pressure, meaning the reduction of nasty funguses that grow when it's too damp and the leaves don't dry out. This also leads to there being a high level of organic viticulture that is possible in this area. But this area is not just sunflowers and lavender fields, although those are there. And I have to tell you, hot tip, if you drive by a sunflower field, you need to stop the car and take a photo, because whatever you take from the car is just going to be a blurry yellow mess. The landscape is more varied than you think, broken up into prominent hill ranges, especially when you head towards the eastern side of this region. And this creates some opportunities for elevation, interesting climates, different soils. So we said that rosé is the star, and it makes up about 90% of the wines that are made here, and that is actually increasing. So what is the classic Provence-style rosé? Well, very pale in color, light to medium in body, dry, with delicate red fruit. Methods include both direct press and saignée. Not all this rosé is simple pale stuff you see in the grocery store. There's these emerging styles of these much more serious rosés called Grand Rosé or Rosé à conserver, and these are designed to improve with age. Maybe they need a few years in the bottle before they are consumed and are expressing more terroir, so more specialty style rosés. These unique bottles are being made. You may have seen the one with the rose on the bottom. There's this shape bottle from Provence that looks like an hourglass figure. It's called flûte à corset. Looks like a corset that's been cinched in the middle. The reds here range from fresh and fruity style to fuller bodied, some requiring barrel maturation. And the whites are often focused on Vermentino, which is called Roll in this area, plus Claret and some others. What are the top grapes planted? All right, Grenache. So Grenache at 38%, Cinsault at 19%, and Syrah at 16% represent the top three grapes. And for reds, we also see Old Vine Carignan and Mourvedre playing important roles. There's quite a few appellations here. I'm going to focus on the largest one and three of the historically most important. This is interesting to me because the largest one here, which is Côte de Provence, AOC, is a bit of a latecomer. It only got its AOC status in 1977, but it is by far the largest appellation here with 20,100 hectares and represents roughly 72% of all of Provence's production. So this is pretty important. And of course, 91% of that in this region is rosé. The rosés are made from Grenache and Cinsault. And interestingly, up to 20% of white grapes can also be included in these rosé blends. Whites grown in this region are Claret, Semillon, Uni Blanc, and Vermentino. The three coastal pockets, we'll call them these three coastal appellations, are small, way smaller, but important. Particularly one, if you're a level 3 student, you're definitely going to have to know about it. The first OC to be established in this region is Cassis. If you want to spend a dreamy 15 minutes on the internet, Google Cassis and hit the image button. And yes, it is an absolutely stunning region created in 1936. It has the unique designation of being dominated by white wine production at about 70%. In 1941, Bandol and Belay were also approved. Bandol is the appellation that is the most important here to know for my level 3 students. And the grape that is the king of Bandol is Mourvedre. Mourvedre is a grape that needs a lot of heat to ripen properly. The area of Bandol is like a catcher's mitt. If you think of a catcher's mitt facing the south, facing the Mediterranean, you have these steep, terraced slopes. Viticulture here is not easy, but it's got this gorgeous, steep, south-facing amphitheater, which acts like a heat trap. And Mourvedre just loves it. Here you find premium reds grown from Mourvedre. These are dark and full-bodied, powerful tannins. They must be aged at least 18 months in oak and are best after a few years, 2 to 3 years in bottle. These wines can age really beautifully with flavors of bramble, meat, licorice, and spice. The rosés from here are outstanding. And if you were lucky enough to get your hand on the new vintage of Domaine Tempier's rosé, we only got our case allocation. Just so delicious. And if you are local, we're doing a Bandol class on October 28th. It's going to be great. We're tasting about 8 or 9 wines, white, red, and rosé. The other appellation, I just mentioned it mainly because it was created the same time as Bandol, the Ballet AOC, small coastal enclave near Nice with distinct, often mineral-driven wines. We have an IGP that is important here. IGP Méditerranée, also shared with parts of the Rhone and Corsica. So it can be a blend of the wines from these regions and allows for more flexibility. So those are the wines of Provence. I will feature a Provence quiz in next week's newsletter. If you want to sign up for the newsletter, you go to wineeducate.com. And it's the very green button at the top that says newsletter. Sign up. Also, next week, we have our Zoom meeting on the trips. You can get that link in the newsletter as well. Or if you're just inundated with newsletters, and I completely understand, just go to wineeducate.com/trips and you can access the Zoom link right there. It's just the straight up Zoom link. You can click on it. All right. I hope you are now looking at dreamy pictures of Cassis on your computer and planning out your next trip. Thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful weekend. I will talk to you next week.